Now, the people are absolutely beautiful people here. Their poverty is normal. Poverty is just, it's horrible there. They have nothing. It's disease-filled, HIV. 77% of everyone in Ethiopia either has HIV, tuberculosis, malaria, starving to death, and I mean to death, or a combination of one or all of those. And it's just complications everywhere. It's not a vacation site, and this is a young lady who's actually getting married. That garment is passed down. It's not one that this person has. They pass this to each person. And then this right here was a young lady that we ran into, just a sweet little kid. And this kind of gives you an idea of the passion and the love of these people. But we set up a makeshift clinic in an alley for about 4 to 5 hours one day. We saw 90 people. We worked with the doctors. We brought doctors with us. We brought nurses with us. We were actually giving them prescriptions ourselves. This is Catherine, and this is Seaside again. He was our guide and our translator. In this clinic of the people that we saw, by the time we come back, most of the 90 people we saw will be dead, because they are dying left and right. There was a little boy that I was rubbing his head. He had like horns all over his head. And I asked what the problem was. I wanted to get him some salve or something. Wait a minute. And they told me, they said he's at the last stages of malnutrition. He's going to die. And he's just cringing. And you just have no idea that you have that in your arms. You couldn't help but to hug him. The woman I showed you a minute ago that's dying of HIV and TB and all that, we carried her out. We didn't care. You just get to the point where you don't care what they have. You want to help them. And you see that all through this area. From our motel up on the side of the mountain, I have to share this. The motel is not the motel like you would normally see. It looks nice when you're going up the mountain, but when you get up there, you find out that it's very primitive. The water, trying to get water out of the faucet, you have to get below the faucet to get water out of it. There's all kinds of things. The cords that come in, the main power cords that come in, like you have the big cables outside, their cables actually look like that, coming off the power lines. So when Sherry plugged in her hair dryer, and it actually melted the cord into the floor, so we had to apologize for melting into the carpet, but not a whole lot we can do about that. But it's just amazing how primitive they are there. But from this cliff, we stood on a cliff, we could see the ruins of the palaces of the Queen of Sheba, which you read about with Solomon. The Queen of Sheba, King Exana, who brought Christianity to Ethiopia, King Khalid. He was one of the mighty kings of Ethiopia. This is actually the tomb of King Khalid right here. The bathing pool of the Queen of Sheba is this right here. This is the day of Timkah, where they bless the water. It's the baptism of Christ that they celebrate. All the men and boys strip off all their clothes and jump off the cliffs into this bathing pool. This water is so diseased. They told us if it touched us, it would burn us. And they said, definitely do not get it in your eyes. One of our men got some crazy idea. He jumped in the water, and his legs were swollen so bad they could barely get him up to the motel. There wasn't a whole lot you could do for him. But that's the bathing pool of the Queen of Sheba. We could look down and see the tombs of a lot of the great kings. This is actually the stele part. These steles, these huge granite pieces, were made to honor the great kings. This was the largest piece of stone ever quarried in one piece. And as they were putting it up, it fell over and crushed the temple. And that still lays there today. And the king's tombs are down underneath this. 99% of Aksum, Ethiopia's ancient empire, is still underground, has not been excavated, and very little of it you ever see. And by the way, Mussolini came back in World War II on the orders of Adolf Hitler to find the Ark of the Covenant. That was another time when the Ark disappeared underground. He was so infuriated that in the middle of the night they backed up trucks and stole that stele right there. Took it to Rome, and it was in Rome, right downtown Rome, until 2005 when the Italian government ordered to send it back to Ethiopia. And that actually has cables on it because they're trying to stabilize it still today. We could see the stele park with the tombs of the kings. We could see the deserts and the mountains. This is a shot from up above. This right here is where that church was, the original Ark of the Covenant church that was torn down. This right here is just one big hollow dome. It's a church where they all kind of gather. It was built in 1968 to honor Queen Elizabeth, and there's nothing really in that place except for a hollow dome, and they go in there to worship. The Church of the Ark, which I'm going to show you in a few minutes, is right here. The Stele Park is right down here. You swing over this way. There's the bathing pool of the Queen of Sheba. Up here on the hillside's her palace. King Caleb's palace is also up there, and his son's palace, which he became a king as well. And notice these. Keep these in mind. You see what those are? What do they look like to you? A bunch of birds? Those are eagles. Those are all eagles and black hawks. Now I want you to remember that as we go through this tonight. But the building that they have in Axum, Ethiopia, is called the Church of St. Mary of Zion Church. It is, like I said, the only place on earth that they claim they have the Ark of the Covenant. They don't care whether you're there. They don't promote it. They don't want you there. And they believe they have been cursed and diseased by God in order to spend all of their life and all of their time focused on worshiping Him. And they do it 365 days a year. They walk out of the mountains. The priests and monks give up their lives. The women come to this place and pray every day with their face buried in the dirt. They pray for children. If the ark, God on the ark, gives them a child, their first child, they give it back to the church to be raised as a monk, pure as a monk, and hopefully one day to be chosen. It's close to this fence. No one crosses this fence. They will tell you, they will kill you if you get too close to this. Nobody crosses the Ark of the Covenant fence except for what they claim to be the priests or the monks, but no one sees the ark except for the guardian. The guardian is selected for his purity, absolute pure, and believed to be of the direct line of Solomon and of the Levite tribe. Once they're chosen, he will immediately choose his successor in case anything ever happens to him. This guy, folks, this is an incredible person. There's only been 30 of them over the years. What happens is this guy he never ever leaves that fence again. Ever will he walk out of that fence again once he enters it. He is the only person that can see the ark. He prays in front of the Ark of the Covenant, they say, 8 hours a day. He will die in that enclosure. When he dies, they'll wrap him in a shroud. They have a field off to the side of humps in the ground. They dig a hole, they throw him in it, and they cover it over and bring in the new guardian. They've done 30 of those over the years. I started to ask the question, why would someone go through all this trouble? Why would a guy give his entire life? He can't be with his friends, his family anymore. He can't leave the enclosure. He can't really speak to anyone. He can speak as in a prayer to you, but you can't address him back again. And we started to ask the question, why? All these things just fitting into place biblically right here. Well, we got to go into this place called the treasury, which is like a bunker right next to that church. You just don't go in there. We have Bob Cornuke has great favor with these people. He's the only man outside that's not a priest that they welcome in. Matter of fact, the high priest Nauru meets with Bob Cornuke when he comes to town. That's how much they revere him in Ethiopia. We were given access to this treasury. They took our cameras. They let us go in. Inside this treasury, they have the solid gold crowns of the mighty kings in their sepulchres. All of their robes that they carry. Everybody came in, and they immediately started a beeline to the back because they said they were bringing out the shroud that was covered over the ark when it arrived. This very ornate piece of a garment covered in gold. Well, I was looking at the crowns, and I was kind of leaning up like this, looking at them, and my hands started to tingle. My arms started to go numb. I thought I was having a heart attack. I really did. I started to sweat profusely. And as I was sitting here, I started to get like this, and I knelt down, and I fell down and turned around this way. And when I looked, I was looking face to face with 2 5-foot silver trumpets made of pounded, hammered silver, with 12 bands, which is the 12 bands of Israel's tribes on it. So I called over our guy and I said for something. That became the entire theme of our trip. When the trumpets sound, will we arise and go? I did a message on it to our entire team that next night. But these are the trumpets that came from Moses himself. He handled those two trumpets. Started to ask this again. How can this be? 20 yards away in a church, they claim to have the Ark of the Covenant. A man gives his life. They guard it 365 days a year with machine guns and machetes and swords. Here's the two trumpets that they claim in the Bible that were with David and were with Solomon. And now here they are on this same place with the Ark of the Covenant again. So I started to get questioning. Where are they coming from? Why do they have these things? If this is not true, how can all of this be? How can the Ark of the Covenant be in this desolate place in the desert mountains of Ethiopia? So the best place to go is the Bible. If you're going to find anything and find the truth, you've got to go to the Bible. So we found that all the theories and everything kind of just laid into place. Well, what happens here is everyone during their claims, Nebuchadnezzar, Shishak, the Babylonians, every one of them that they claimed took the Ark of the Covenant were before the time of Hezekiah. In the scriptures in 2 Kings 19:15, Hezekiah, who is after all this took place, after Solomon, after all this, Hezekiah in that scripture goes to the temple, to the Holy of Holies, and kneels before God at the Ark of the Covenant. And we know that because in that scripture he tells us that he prayed to him who is between the two cherubims. Where's the only place that God's going to show up between the two cherubims? On the mercy seat on the Ark of the Covenant. God was dwelling in that place. Between the two cherubims, God dwelling in that place, or God is with us. There's only, those scriptures always meant the Ark of the Covenant was present. Okay? So, Hezekiah's time, we know that the Ark of the Covenant was still in the first temple. It hadn't been destroyed yet. But we found in the scriptures itself that the most likely time the ark disappeared was during the time of Manasseh. This is Hezekiah's son. Manasseh was an evil man. He defiled the temple. He sacrificed his son in the temple, brought idols into the temple. History shows that the Levite priest would have never allowed the Ark of the Covenant to remain in a place that was defiled and degraded, as Manasseh did. Okay? So, we got to assume that it wasn't there at that time. So that is the best place in history that the Ark of the Covenant would have disappeared. That's where it would have just completely disappeared. We found out that the Levites would not allow that. So through time, as you start to see this, if he's going to defile the temple, the Levites are going to say, forget this, but how's the Ark of the Covenant? Okay? It's important to realize that. That's the remains of part of that temple still today, as it's been unearthed and excavated on this island. Now, historical scrolls that were found in this place, in Ashwan, on this island, said that the priests, the Levites, were in that place. They said in those that the presence of the Lord was with them and God was dwelling there. Again, if the Levites are claiming that, what's the only place or only thing that they could be talking about? The Ark of the Covenant was in that place. This is the only place possible that God would come down, He would dwell at, and His presence would be there. Now, people get upset at this point because they're like, wait a minute, the Ark never could have left Israel. It's still there today. Well, even the Jews will tell you that's a good line in a lot of cases for tourism and things like that in Israel today. But a lot of Jews will also tell you that they know where the Ark of the Covenant is, and they believe it's in Ethiopia. Now, 2 generations later after Manasseh, you have Amon, which was his son, who didn't live very long. He became king. Then his son Josiah became a very young king. Josiah attempted to clean Israel. He wanted to cleanse it from his grandfather's wrath. He tried to cleanse the temple. He wanted the ark back in there. Well, how do you know, Jim, that the ark wasn't there? Well, I just showed you. They wouldn't leave it in there. And for some reason, the Levites have moved on to another place. At least that's what the writings are showing. In the biblical text in the Bible is where we go with this. Josiah cries out to the Levite priest. He says, put the holy ark in the house which Solomon, the son of David, king of Israel, did build. It shall not be a burden upon your shoulders. Serve the Lord your God and His people Israel. So you're sitting there thinking, okay, what's that got to do with anything? Well, it tells us that the ark was not in Jerusalem. It says, put the holy ark in the house which Solomon, the son of David, king of Israel, did build. It's not in there anymore. He tells us plain as day. Then he goes on to tell us in 2 Chronicles, it was transported properly. It shall not be a burden upon your shoulders. How did the Levites carry it? On their shoulders. Then he says, the priests were not serving Israel because he says, serve now the Lord your God and his people. Who? Israel. So they're not serving Israel anymore. They're somewhere else. Where are they at? Boom, King Necho passes in from Egypt. He's a pharaoh. Pharaohs are normally praising and worshiping the little g gods, the cow gods, the sun gods, all these different gods. This particular pharaoh pops in, though, and he marches near Jerusalem to take on the Babylonians. Josiah says he goes out against him. Now, why would this guy, who has no problem with him, walk out and march up? Pharaoh from Egypt says the capital G God is giving him the orders. It's in the scripture in 2 Chronicles.
Who was he fighting?
The Babylonians. Okay? Now, Josiah masked himself. He didn't take to the heat. Masked himself, went into battle, and was killed. It was prophesied that the temple would be destroyed, and the ark would never return there until the end times when Jesus returns. And Josiah, they said it would not happen until after Josiah died. So guess what happened? Israel was just demolished at this time. Now, we find the writings in history tell us that when the Egyptians, or in the Egyptian temple in Aswan on Elephantine Island, it was destroyed. And the Levites disappeared. No bloodshed. They left behind their documents, but they left. Everything with them was gone except for their writings. Now, what we find out, that was in 470 BC. The Ark of the Covenant, shortly after that, arrives on an island, according to historical documents, on Tanakirkos Island in Ethiopia. This is in the middle of its giant lake. It takes 3.5 hours one way on a little boat to get to this island. This island is guarded by monks, and since the beginning of time, there has been no one but the purity of these monks that have guarded this island. Now, historical writings show that this was the place that the ark rested in a makeshift tabernacle for 800 years up on this island. This is Tanakirkos Island today. This is not the island down here. This is marshland where alligators and crocodiles, or crocodiles and hippos are. The island is up here on top of this. It's about a mile this way, and its farthest point across, maybe 200 yards. It's up 40 foot on cliffs, up to 60 foot at their highest points, and they live up there. These monks live up on this place, and they live in little tiny huts that they fit into, individual huts. They live primitive. They don't have any real metal or anything. They cook over fires, and just like you walked into time. Once they arrive on this island as little boys, they never leave there ever again. They guard this island and have for centuries. This area right here, just remember the layout of this. This right here is where this is the only way up on this island. We actually crashed into the rocks 3 times before a monk grabbed the front of the boat. When you get up there, it's a cliff that's broken down. You have to climb up the cliff, up that cliff. When you get up there, the women are not allowed to go any farther than that area, this one particular area. The men then were sent down a path through the jungle. We followed the Abba, the father of the island. We followed him through the jungle, and we came into a clear area. When we got into this clear area, it was surrounded by 2 sides by jungles, another high cliff on the other side. It's reported that King Exana, I mentioned to you that the king that brought Christianity to Ethiopia, he came to the island of Tanakirkos with his army, took the Ark of the Covenant to Axum, Ethiopia, where his empire rested, and which that is still claimed today. He took it there, and that's where it remained in that one church, and then it was transferred, of course, into the new church when that building was built. They say, if you ask them what it looks like, Narub will tell you, the high priest, it is accurate in the Bible. That's all he'll say. And the second thing is, well, when are you going to bring it out? Not until it's needed. That time when it is needed. During our exploration, we got the opportunity to research the treasury of the Ark. This is on this island. that we talked about. This is leading down toward that treasury area. That's in Axum. We got to talk to the high priest, Naru. You just don't walk up to the high priest of Axum, Ethiopia, and say, "Hey, dude, what's going on?" You don't do that. He is a very distinguished man. You have to have privilege to go to see him. Bob Cornuke has that. And we were given the opportunity to go up and meet him as he blessed us. That's Nauru right there. We got to explore the tombs of the kings, like I mentioned to you before. That's lowering down into the tomb of King Exana. And then we got to take part in the holiest day of the year, the day of Timkat. This is the day, depending on who you talk to, that they claim it's the baptism of Christ. Now, some say it's the celebration that the day the ark arrived in Axum, Ethiopia. 100,000 people come out of the mountains for a 2-day celebration. They bury their faces in the ground and pray without ceasing for 14, 15 hours at a time during this session. These men, if I would have known this more when we were there, I would have spent a whole lot more time with it. These men, these monks, are dressed in the ceremonial robes or garments of the Levites. This is a tawak, a replica of the ark. It's just a wooden box covered over, and inside they've got a scroll or scripture. Okay? What I found out later, and this is what in my heart I believe, they eventually take this, they parade it through the streets, they come to a makeshift tabernacle that has a Holy of Holies, they put it in there, they walk out, the priests line up, and for the next 14, 15 hours, they sit there and chant prayers, and the people flat on their face. Outside of the area, they play the great big wooden and animal skin stretched Hebrew drums, move these things called sistrums, and they blow trumpets, and they give out a loud yell. Woo! And they'll do that all night long as they celebrate the Ark of the Covenant. Now, my theory on this, and you'll see why in a few minutes, is because I believe that every year, once a year...
When is Timkat?
Timkat's in mid-January.
Mid-January.
Yeah, it happens in mid-January. On that day, just to let you know, on that day, the BBC, CNN, Fox News, all the major networks are there with their cameras. They arrive just for that. They show up that day. They stand outside while they're getting ready to bring this box out. That box is inside the Church of the Ark. It just sits in there. When it's time for them to need it, they bring it out. They do that whole thing. They sit there with their cameras ready and poised, just in case they bring out the real Ark. And when they don't, they pack up their cameras, they ride their Jeeps, and they get out of action. That's the only reason they're there. Because they believe every year that's going to happen. So, we went to the tops of the cliffs of Tanakirkos Island, where we showed you just a minute ago. I'll share this with you, because I can do this as of tonight for the first time. I came up, again, remember I told you about the trumpets when I started feeling bad? Well, we go up this cliffside, and I get to this spot, and they said this is where the tabernacle was for 800 years. It sat on this top of this cliff. I mean, both sides, you fall off 40 foot, you're dead. I got up there, and I thought maybe the heat was getting to me. I started to numb up again. I started to sweat. I fell down on my knees again, and I started digging on this slab of rock. And when I dug on the slab of rock, I found this little indention in the rock. And when I found that indention, Bob Cornuke says, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I don't know, Bob, but I think something's here." He says, "You're right." He says, "That's the slab of rock where the Ark of the Covenant actually rested. Those holes are the holes that supported the feet to keep it from rocking around on the rock." So I started to dig, and I found all 4 of the holes, exact dimensions of what the Ark of the Covenant would have been in the Scripture. This is where that spot was. This is the first one I found. This was the second one. There's another one here, another one down here. Perfectly aligned. Now, I'll share this with you, because this is in the book. This is also the place where the high priest, the Abba, leaned over and said to Miskano, and Miskano said to Bob, and they said, "Oh, that's also where Jesus knelt with his Father." So on this particular rock was a host to a very heavenly summit. And that's what we're being able to reveal to the world for the very first time. And actually, you were the first people, other than the team that was with us, which they don't know most of the evidence, because they haven't seen all the evidence I came up with, that this is the place that the heavenly summit happened, where Jesus received all of his grace and knowledge. was on this spot. These were actually what was left of some mummies, Egyptian mummies that came to worship at the ark that didn't make it out. We got to hold in the hands the breastplate. Remember I told you the breastplate, the harness that held the breastplate up from Solomon's temple. On this island, folks, here in that area that I told you about with the rock wall and the arch, it's an ancient, huge wooden door. He pulls out a set of keys that look like they came from medieval times. He unlocks 3 locks, opens this up, and said, these are from Solomon's temple. They have no metal on this island. We said, why and how is this stuff still here if the ark and the trumpets are in action? He says, when they came here, we were Christians at the time, and they didn't need the sacrificial pieces of the old ways of the Hebrews. Now, when we were up there, they showed us, they took something very similar to this horsewhip, and this is obviously for splies, but they used something very similar to this. They demonstrated how they would dip into the blood and sprinkle the sacrificed blood of the animal on top of the ark where God would come down to purify it. Then he took it and dipped it again and sprinkled it on the floor right below the ark. We said, whoa, 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 what's that for? And they said, because when God came down in the scripture, it says he would rest the soles of his feet. That means that God literally sat on a throne on this earth. His feet would rest, his backside would be on the mercy seat, and he actually would rest on that throne. That became the throne of God on this earth. And it had to be purified anywhere he touched. And like I said, this is the only place on earth that only pure monks have ever inhabited. So think about that. We also got to investigate the tabernacle pole sockets. If you're going to have a tabernacle, you got to have sockets in the ground. And you're talking rock here. Otherwise the wind would blow it over. Well, still today, Bob discovered these a few years ago during one of his trips over there. They investigated this. There's these pole sockets about every 13 feet up this cliff. It matches perfectly to the scriptures. Then we got to go to an area called Gondar, which is where a lot of the kings eventually moved to. There's actually castles still there today. We met a woman by the name of Mary. And up on this island, or up on this mountaintop, Mary is actually claimed to be one of the final Colossian Jews, the Hebrew Jews of possibly the Levite tribe left. And when we went up there, we did DNA cheek swabbing of Mary. Now, we also did cheek swabbing of the monks on Tanakirkos Island to see if that was true, and they're still working on all of that still today. This is Mary. That's Catherine doing the swabbing of Mary. She's a very humble woman, lives in a hut, cried. Oh, I just felt the passion of her. But I want to share with them what happened. Sherry was filming. Never really had anything like this take place before. Sherry had a little camera, Skylar's little camera, and she's holding it up, she's filming. We were the only ones left in there. Mary, myself, Sherry, and our guide, Moscato, was with us. And she speaks in her native tongue of Amharic. It wasn't in English. And we heard her. She backed up. She's crying. I'm crying. Mary's crying. Everybody's crying. Because God actually performed some type of miracle in that place that day. Now, we had to ask the question again. Why accident? Why this place? Well, we went to the scriptures in Isaiah 18, folks, and this is the profound telling of it all. In Isaiah 18, it says, from a standpoint of Jesus' return, like we talked about earlier, from Jesus' return to reclaim his kingdom, when the third temple is built, and Jesus comes back to this earth to claim